I am not your honey. Honey? You're wondering what I mean by that. Okay, so in this episode, we are going to address some pet peeves of mine, and I know for a fact that it affects a lot of people in the nursing home and your patients in the hospital, because the truth of the matter is they're not your honey. Let's talk about it. So one thing I have found personally for me, I'm old school. So it's important to me that people address me properly, okay? Be mindful and be respectful of the office that I'm occupying. It could be I'm the instructor, I'm the charge nurse. And that's how I was raised. I'm old school. So I am Miss Amy or Nurse Amy. And I'm never rude. That's how also I treat my patients and visitors or family members that come in. So that's just how I am. But you know, one thing I found out, I'm not the only one who feels that way. And I started to actually research into this when I doing a research on combative patients, and I wonder, why are they combative? Sometimes they're not able to communicate to you their irritation, but it all boils down to really how you address them, how you treat them. Now, there are three, I'm going to group it into three, okay? Number one, do not address your patients with pet names. Okay, I know in some places, depends on what part of the country or what part of the world you're from, it's okay to call people honey. I don't know where, but I do know that in some places here in the United States and again, like I said, some parts of the world, where it's terms of endearment. But then again, it's terms of endearment for people in your family or in that social circle or social network around you, but not so much for strangers. It's annoying, it sounds condescending, and it's rude. Okay, it looks like you're talking down to this person and you're putting yourself in a position of power. Because look at it this way, you're already in a position of power. If they're sick and you're catering to them, whether you want to admit it or not, it already puts them in a place kind of above you. So they already feel bad. Okay, if you've ever been sick, you would understand what I mean. Usually when you're in a sick position, you already feel bad. You already feel like you're powerless. You already feel like you're giving your power away. So when someone who's younger than you, or someone who is maybe in a lower station than you, maybe, this is us just talking. I'm not saying they are, or that's how they feel, but maybe that's how they feel. And so when you come with your, oh honey, oh dear, oh yes dear, or baby girl, please stop. Just stop it. They will not respond to you positively. If anything, you're just going to make that patient very combative, especially the ones that cannot respond to you. The ones that can will probably tell you that they take offense to your terms of endearment. They don't like it. But for those who are not communicative because they're not able to, they're going to struggle. They're going to be resistant to your care. Does that make sense? And I see it happen all the time. And you wonder why certain patients respond well to certain caretakers than others. It's things like this. If you don't address them properly, because this is, first off, I teach my students how to address patients. Okay, it starts with in my classroom. I'm Miss Amy or Nurse Amy. So it's not even so much the fact that I'm older than a lot of them are coming to my class, but it's also trying to get into their brain that addressing people in a respectful manner really makes your job easy. Okay, so even if they're working on mannequins, I insist they're sir or ma'ams or they are Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, unless they give you permission to address them any other way. But that's them. They have given you permission to do so. If they've not given you permission to do so, please do not call them pet names. They're not your children. They're not your lover. They're not your, they're not your pets. So those honey, no darling, no dear, oh hello, and I've seen this happen before. And then the CNA came back to me and said, oh, she's not very talkative. I'm like, well, I will tell you what you did. What you did was you patronized her. You were very condescending. And she's like, no, I wasn't rude to her. I'm like, no, not in your actions, but in the way you addressed her. She's old school, okay? She's a woman of a particular age, but it could even be someone of your same age. It could be younger. They just don't want it. They don't want. For one, I don't like people in my space. So there are people like that too. They don't want you in their space. So first of all, you're in their space. But if you're in their space, at least treat them with respect. So that's number one. Number two is baby talk when feeding your patient. All that, open your mouth, yes, there you go, wide, yeah, goo goo gaga. Please stop it. They're not your babies. You need to understand this. Put yourself in their position. Are you gonna like that? If someone talks to, first of all, the fact that you are feeding them, again, be mindful of your position. You occupy a position of power. You might not see it as that. They do. Nobody likes to be fed unless it's a romantic thing, okay? However, they are dependent on you. So the fact that you're feeding them already takes power from them and makes them helpless. So bring some dignity to when you're feeding them and don't go goo goo gaga, good girl, good boy, oh look at that, yes, there you go. Please don't do that. I have written people off for just doing that. It's wrong. It's wrong. But every time be conscious of the fact that the position in which you occupy is very sensitive. So you wonder why patients are depressed, why they cry, why they refuse care. It's things like this. Please don't baby talk them. Another thing is, the clothing protector. You have to ask their permission before you put it on them. There's a reason for that. They're not babies, So even if they know eating it's going to be sloppy and they might be drooling, they can tell you no, they don't want the clothing protector. Now you're wondering, what is clothing protector? Another word could be bib, but we don't say that word because bibs are for baby. So moving to the third mistakes of I am not your honey, okay? And that's true. I'm not your honey. I've got a name. Use my name. When you are doing personal care. Personal care is very intimate. So that is when you're dressing them, undressing them, washing them up. So they are already, if you didn't think this, put yourself in their position. They don't have any clothing on. They are embarrassed. They are at your mercy. And when you're doing such care and you say things like, oh, well, honey, can you turn for me, honey? Oh, can you raise your leg, darling? Oh, yes, that's a good girl. Okay, first of all, you're communicating totally different, what should I call it? Totally different. You're communicating wrong. Okay, you're giving false impressions, you're conveying the wrong message. And you also need to be careful, especially if you deal with people that their reality isn't necessarily your reality. And for those of you in healthcare, you already know what I'm talking about. There are people who deal with reality-based issues. So when you start to do the honey talk, the good boy, good girl, and oh, there you go, yeah, doesn't that feel good? Okay, in their world, it could mean you're making a pass. It could mean you're putting yourself in a position of intimacy with them, and then they will respond to that. And then you take offense and you start to label them. Do you see how that works? It just snowballs from there. So please call people by their names, okay? And when you're doing so, I don't even want you calling Mary Mary. It's Miss Mary. And if she tells you, oh no, call me Mary, and then call her Mary if that's what makes her feel happy. But do not be so, because I've seen people do that. It's very, very rude. I've seen people just, oh yes, Bridget, and then Bridget doesn't want you taking care of her, and you're wondering why. Well, it's things like this. And I teach the aides that I work with that's why you have a combative patient. They will fight you because that's their way of communicating. Like, they don't like you. They don't like they find it too aggressive. They find you trying to come into a space they've not invited you to. So you need to, be cognizant of things like this. So again, these are all the things that I have seen on the floor, and I make sure I impact this knowledge to my students. And I can promise you, it's opened up a whole new world of understanding for my students, because they didn't think about it this way. And my students include caretakers who've been doing this for many years. And they're like, oh my God, they come back to me. I'm like, a lady that would never let me take care of her, I just readdressed the way I would normally interact with her, the way I would normally introduce topics or things with her. I'm more respectful. I drop the pet names. Please drop the pet names. They're not your honey. And they're like, it's a miracle. So I pat myself on the back. It's just something I thought about. I did some research on it, and it's been giving positive feedback. So if you've gotten any kind of value from this episode today, please hit that notification bell and subscribe. For those of you who are always here, thank you so much. My students, I love you. I'm meeting new people through this platform, and I am so grateful. So until I come your way again, please be safe. I'll see you in the next video.